בשם השם נעשה ונצליח, שיעור תורה, ברוכים הבאים, שבוע טוב, שבוע מבורך. We're starting a new week, B'ezrat Hashem. This week's the week of Purim. So B'ezrat Hashem, b'siyata d'shmaya, we'll include a few things about Purim as well in our series on the Jewish HaShkafa. Tonight's shiur will be for a refuah shlema for Rabbanit Levana bat Sarah, Rabbi Ephraim ben Shulamit, Rabbanit Sarah bat Anat, Sarah bat Levana, Liora bat Avraham, and Tinok ben Pinchas, David ben Esriya, Doris bat Jora, Esther bat Tzipora, Yitro ben Avraham, Abigail bat Surya, Talia bat Sarah, Orit bat Ilana, Michal bat Yael, Stefan ben Katarina, and also for a Atzlacha Rabba for Marsha bat Julie, Ayla bat Marsha, Alexander ben Marsha, Samuel ben Marsha, Shaul ben Farzane, Yitro ben Avraham, Oshri ben Doris, Gabi ben Doris, Elad ben Doris, David ben Esriya, Reuven Chaim ben Pala Parel, Shmuel Yitzchak ben Pala Parel, Naftali Tzvi ben Pala Parel, and all of Am Yisrael. B'ezrat Hashem will have refuah shlema, refuat hanefesh, refuat haguf, and atzlacha rabba b'kol ma'aseh yadayim. Especially the wonderful people that are helping us do all the amazing things that the organization is doing, Baruch Hashem. So, just a brief update as we usually do, but Darkenu B'Kodesh, give you a little bit of an update. The campaign for Purim to help the poor in Eretz Yisrael continues, Baruch Hashem, where we got a whole team of people that are distributing matanot le'evyonim, helping the poor in different parts of Israel, in Bnei Brak, in Netanya, in Yerushalayim, several other areas, Baruch Hashem, Tel Tzion. We have, I think, maybe almost 50 families over there, Baruch Hashem. So quite a bit of help. We, as I told you last week, we already sent $50,000 there to make sure that we help at least the 300 families that we committed to. We're going to try to do as much as we possibly can. This is as much as we can so far. We were hoping to at least raise that much money from the public. But so far we haven't gotten it yet. Baruch Hashem, we're getting there, but there's a lot more help that's needed. And also remember, this is not just one of those campaigns that you should consider whether to be part of or not part of, because if you want to fulfill the mitzvot of Purim, this is a must. Now you have to contribute, whether you contribute to our campaign or somebody else's campaign, that's your decision. But there are two major mitzvot that a person needs to do. Aside from mishloach manot, you have to make sure that you help the poor with the machatzit shekel, which this year is somewhere in the neighborhood of $9 to $10, and also matanot le'evyonim, which is to feed feed a person. So in essence, you feed a family. It's going to cost you a little bit of money. We're doing it where approximately $180 per family. Which is nothing in Western society, but in Israel you could feed a decent-sized family with approximately 500 shekels. So that's about $180 or so, $170, give or take. So anyone that has more than himself to fulfill a mitzvah for, himself, his wife, herself, her husband, you have some kids in your house that are above 12 and 13 years old, for girls and boys respectively. Each one of them is obligated to fulfill this mitzvah of matanot le'evyonim, which is to feed the poor. And the key is to make sure to not wait until the last minute. A lot of people wait till the last minute and, they do everything the last minute. But the reality is that just like the mishloach manot needs to be given on Purim, so does the matanot le'evyonim needs to be given on Purim. That if you send the money now we can use it for this mishloach manot. But if you send me a donation on Sunday next week, it's not really going to help you for this particular mitzvah. We could still use it for other charitable things that we do to help poor people coming up for Pesach and so on. But if you want to fulfill the mitzvah for Purim, the best idea is to do it as soon as possible and make sure that we actually use it for this specific distribution. Now, for all of those people that are, come the last minute, they end up donating on Thursday. If we've already reached our $50,000 goal by then, but it's very likely we'll end up sending more money ahead of time. So you could continue sending more and we'll use every bit of it. Most likely we'll end up sending more money than we end up getting for people because the amount of poor people is just growing by the second over there. But nonetheless, again, it's each person needs to think for themselves of what's the most important thing, to spend $200-300 on a costume and a mishloach manot, or to help somebody actually eat. Help the Jews or help yourself get another costume. It's people have to think about these things. Anyway, aside from that, we have Baruch Hashem, the movies coming along. The translation team, Baruch Hashem, is moving along. We're translating the movie into multiple languages. That's coming along well. I'm hoping that BeEzrat Hashem, all of the subtitles should be completed within the next week or so. And BeEzrat Hashem will be able to launch this monumental movie that I believe is the biggest movie in Torah history. BeEzrat Hashem later in probably the next month or so, maybe sooner, maybe later, give or take. Really, the movie itself is ready. For all of those people that are asking, what's going to happen, or some people are making suggestions of different things we could add to the movie is ready. We just want to make sure that when we finally distribute it, we send it out to the public, we're using all of the different tools that we possibly can to make sure that it has the biggest impact. You only have one chance to introduce yourself. So you want to make sure that you make the most amount of impact and it goes to the most amount of channels and most amount of people right off the gate, rather than building over time, which anyway we're going to do. But again, we're trying to have everything ready when it's finally out. So the movie itself is Baruch Hashem ready. It's an amazing movie, and hence the reason why I'm so confident that it'll do so well and reach a lot of people. For anyone that's actually courageous enough to watch the whole thing, it'll definitely improve your life, change your life, and definitely make you rethink certain things that you or other people that you know are doing in your life. And I think it's one of those things that you have to be blind, deaf, and simply reluctant to change, not to be impacted by this movie. Which, unfortunately, such people do exist in the world, but nonetheless, hopefully it's not the majority. Okay, with that being said, let's start our week with a little bit of Torah, see where we're at with everything, see how everything connects, b'siyata d'ishmaya, to not only the current events that are getting crazier by the day, but also Purim. Purim is an extraordinary time. Many people, myself included, grew up thinking that Purim is just a fun holiday where you dress up, get some chocolates from your friends, maybe a little bit of wine, make a fool out of yourself, and hear the Megillah, and that's it, it's finished. There's really no bigger mistake than that. For anyone that learned a little bit of Gemara, or some of the Chachamim that have discussed this topic, Purim is an extraordinarily holy holiday. Even though it's not considered a Yom Tov, where you're not forbidden to drive, you're not forbidden to light fire or cook like you would on Pesach or Sukkot or other Yom Tov, Purim is in fact considered holier in certain aspects than some of the holiest holidays we have, even including Yom Kippur. In fact, if you look deeper into Purim and what the Chachamim have actually said about it in the Gemara and other places, is that Yom Kippur in certain aspects is lesser than Purim. Why? Because it says that once the Mashiach comes, obviously HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to destroy the Yetzer Hara, and there's not going to be any more Yetzer Hara, and there's not going to be any more inclination to sin anymore, and therefore there's not going to be any more repentance needed for Yom Kippur. So they're not going to cancel the holiday, but what's going to happen on Yom Kippur every year? Every year Yom Kippur is going to be a celebration day. It's going to be a big celebration day for Am Yisrael, a big celebration for all of the people that live in the world and serving Hashem at that moment, because there's not going to be any more bad people. There's not going to be more any heresy. There's not going to be any more Manis Friedmans of the world. There's not going to be any more of that garbage. It's just going to be people that fear Hashem, love Hashem, and serve Hashem 100%. They're just like this week's Parashat Tetzaveh, Shemen Zayit Zach. Shemen Zayit Zach is a completely pure oil, and that's in essence what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to leave himself from this world. The Shemen Zayit Zach of the world, the completely full pure people, the people that have done everything they possibly could to serve Hashem from fear and love, to serve Hashem with complete sacrifice, to serve Hashem with complete effort, to serve Hashem with every little bit of themselves. That's in essence what's going to be left in this world. People always ask, what's going to happen once Mashiach comes? Is everybody going to... This is what's going to happen. It's going to be a big war. 2/3 of the world are going to die from that war. The rest of the third that's left will be refined. Some of the people there will not survive. The ones that do are going to be the Shemen Zayit Zach of the world. They're going to be the completely pure oil of the world. Those are the ones that can survive. If you're not there yet, then get there. Work on yourself to get there. I'm trying to get there. Hopefully you're trying to get there. That's in essence our whole purpose in the world, is to try to get there, to try to become that pure oil to the best of our ability, which means we all have to work on our Yirat Shamayim, we all have to work on our chesed, we all have to work on our arrogance, and so on and so forth. We all have to work on ourselves. It's not just because you keep Shabbat, automatically you're entering. Or just because you're generous, automatically you enter. You have to work on everything. And each and every single person knows their own flaws, or perhaps should investigate deeper to find out that their flaws perhaps are bigger than what they thought initially. But nonetheless, when a person works on themselves, they can eventually become that Shemen Zayit Zach. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to judge us based on how much effort we've put into making ourselves that pure oil. You know, I heard, unfortunately, somebody that I used to speak to tell me, listen, I may not be, since I don't really attend your shiurim anymore, I don't watch, I don't do nothing, I may not have the same Yirat Shamayim and the same fear of Hashem as I used to, but, I still keep Shabbos and I still do a couple of mitzvot. I just think that, that thing that you kept telling me that I'm not good at, where you said I was arrogant, maybe that's still there, but I think it's actually justified. I think that I should be arrogant. That's a person that for sure is setting themselves up for failure, both in this world and the next. Not necessarily just because of the arrogance, which in itself HaKadosh Baruch Hu detests, but even more than that, by accepting failure, by accepting the fact that they're going to sin, and just saying that they just want it. They want to be that way. They want to be a sinner. To sin unknowingly is one thing. To sin knowingly as a result of just failing to do tshuva is also another thing. But to sin knowingly and caring less, that's the worst type of rasha that exists. That's the worst type of rasha. That's a kofer b'kol Torah. A person like that is considered an apikoros in the entire Torah. Even if he keeps Shabbat and he doesn't waste seed and he doesn't do this and doesn't do that. A person that accepts that he is sinning or she is sinning and Hashem is just going to accept me as I am, that's a kofer b'kol Torah. That's a heretic in the entire Torah. To sin and just say, listen, I'm having a tough time with it, that's in essence all of us. But to sin and just say, no, this is just, Hashem is just going to accept me this way. I think it's right that I'm this way. That's a serious offense. So it's very important that each and every single person know that the whole purpose of this shiur, of learning the right HaShkafa from the Chazon Ish, is to learn how to think like a Jew, which meaning a Jew as defined by the Holy Torah. Not defined by society, not defined by apikosim and heretics, but rather defined by the Torah. So we see, Rabotai, that this week is an extraordinary week where Am Yisrael got an enormous salvation. An enormous salvation. And the Gemara says that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu ends this world, there's not going to be any more reason for repentance, because everyone that survived is obviously full Baalei Tshuva, is someone that tried everything they possibly could to get to this point. And this Yom Kippur is going to be a day that is a day of celebration. And because it's going to be a day of celebration, it is named after a day of celebration that's already exists. What day of celebration already exists? Purim. And therefore, Yom Kippurim is Kepurim. It's like Purim, meaning today it's a day of repentance, but in the future, it's going to be a day of celebration. So it's like Purim. So that's in essence, we learn that Yom Kippur, the holy, auspicious day, the day of judgment that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has in the world of giving us an opportunity to do tshuva, is in essence named after Purim. So we see from there who takes precedent in the long run. Point being is, Rabotai, that Purim is a day where Am Yisrael received the biggest salvation in the last several thousand years, because the decree of Haman was much worse than any other decree that ever existed. Any other decree. Because Paro, for example, his decree was to kill the boys, not the girls. Why? He wanted the Jewish girls that he saw, the Jewish women giving birth miraculously to 6 babies at a time. He wanted all of the Jewish girls to be part of his Egyptian army, to create more and more Egyptians, Hashem Yishmo. So he didn't want to kill the Jewish girls, he only wanted to kill the boys. Haman, on the other hand, wanted to kill everyone. The boys, the girls, the old, the young, the men, the women, everyone he wanted to kill. That was his decree. His decree was simply to annihilate Am Yisrael. To annihilate every single member of Am Yisrael, Hashem Yishmo. And of course, HaKadosh Baruch Hu canceled that decree, but how did we even get there in the first place is really the question that each and every single one of us needs to assess over these next several days as we prepare for Purim. Because if we don't know how we got there, we don't really know why we got the salvation. If we don't know how we got the salvation, then what are you really celebrating? Costumes? Getting some chocolates in the mail? Like, what are you really celebrating? So a person really needs to delve into the whole mechanics behind what happened and why it happened. Now, the Chazon Ish, Alav Shalom, has been teaching us how to think like a Jew. And BeEzrat Hashem, we're going to connect this to how we got to where we are today with Purim in general. So in the first couple of chapters, the Chazon Ish has told us about emunah, understanding that Hashem is the one that's running the world. And if you don't understand that, don't even go further. You have to understand that Hashem runs the world in order to understand anything else we're going to say moving forward. If you don't think that Hashem is running the world, like unfortunately some people that attend yeshiva, call themselves religious and so on, still ask me emunah questions. Like, how do you know that God's really running the world? That's a person that's not religious. That's just a person that is secular completely, but dresses religious. And unfortunately, a lot of those people exist in the world. Just like there are people that call themselves professors and scholars, but in reality, they're just junkies with a good job. Like this one wicked waste of a life professor I read about today by name of Carl Hart from Columbia University, who claims to be a professor. He is a professor. He has a job of a professor in one of the most admired universities in the world, needless to say, in the United States. What is his whole thing? He wrote already 2 books about this. He has lectures about this. People actually pay him for his opinion. What is his opinion? His opinion is that you should all do drugs. Why? Because he has a good time doing heroin and ecstasy and all types of illegal drugs. This is what a professor in an Ivy League university in America is teaching the public, and not only teaching it publicly. I mean, if you did a hush-hush behind the scenes, no one ever knew about it. It's obviously terrible. You should, it's probably you should pick a different job. But the reality is we've arrived at a society where a professor is teaching the public that they should legalize heroin and all of the other illegal drugs. Why? Because it's a good way to separate your work life from your fun. This is what a college professor is actually teaching people. I mean, I couldn't believe it. This person is mamash, the malach hamavet, but with a good job. This is what he writes. And somebody sent me this. I couldn't believe it until I saw that he actually has 2 published books. He has 2 published books. One of the recent ones is called Drug Use for Grown-Ups: Chasing Liberty in the Land of Fear, by the publisher Penguin, which is a huge publishing house, actually published this moron's book telling people that they should use heroin and any other illegal drug that can kill you in a second, make you addicted in a half a second, you should use it. This is what he's telling you this is what he's telling his students. This is what he's telling the world. This, Rabotai, is one of the most bizarre things I've seen in my life, simply because we live in a generation where everyone has something to say about Torah education. You have this Yafed, Imach Shema V'Zichram, these fake religious Jews that went and are Muslim, go to the US government to tell them to shut down the Jewish yeshivot because they're not teaching enough secular studies. You have the lefty liberals that want us to pretty much make our Jewish kids into goyim. You have all types of horrible things happening in schools, and everyone has something to say about it, especially the Jewish education. We should teach them, the little Jewish kids, about, being homosexual and how to accept it. We should teach them how to do this. We should teach them how to do that. All types of horrible things. Everybody has a problem with our beautiful, holy teachings in yeshivot. Everyone has a problem with, parents choosing to homeschool their kids just to get them away from all this garbage. Everyone has something to say. But no one has anything to say about a college professor advocating illegal drug use currently. I don't even know how he still has a job. Technically, he is admitting already for multiple years of making a crime, because even though his opinion of drugs may differ and may be acceptable among some people, the reality is he is doing something illegal. The government should put him behind bars for many, many years, just like they do every other criminal. But no, because he has a job in Columbia University, and in essence is viewed as a scholar. That's how awful the world is today. They view a crackhead as a scholar today. Oh, no, he's an intellect. He's an intellect who knows how to use drugs. This, Rabotai, is what is happening in the world today. People always ask me, don't you think my son needs to go to university? Don't you think I should go to college? No. The answer was no before, and it's even more no now. Number one, because most people don't use their college degree. It's a complete waste of time and money. All you're doing is spending $250,000 just to go have fun and go to Gehenom right after you finish having that fun because of all the sins that you're making with that fun. So going to college has always been, at the very least for the last 30 years that I'm aware of it, that has been a tragedy of a place for Jewish people, simply because of all the sins that are made there. You want to get a specific education, you get homeschooling. You could get business schooling. You can get all types of schooling that you don't really need college for. And as far as to be a doctor, to be a lawyer, pick a different profession. Someone who doesn't, you haven't started, you haven't lost anything. There's plenty of people that are successful in other professions. Going to college campuses today in the United States is 100% suicide, spiritual suicide. And not only because of the sins anymore, but rather because this is the quality of teachers that you have. This guy, this crackhead, is viewed as a scholar. The biggest publishing house in America published this guy's second book. And he's given the stage on a regular basis. He's get the covers of a newspaper. Rabotai Yekarim, the Jewish ideology has never been more pertinent for survival of mankind than ever before. The Jewish ideology, in reality, is not really only for the Jews. It seems like right now, the Jewish ideology is to save whoever wants to save themselves. Because whoever doesn't have anything remotely close to what the Jewish HaShkafa is, the ideology, is just simply not going to survive society. Your kids will learn to become crackheads and prostitutes. Your neighbors are going to be crackheads and prostitutes. That's all you're going to have in society left. Why? Because that's where things are going. People are addicted to everything, and they're being promoted as a result of this. They're actually being celebrated as a result of this. The worst of society looks like it's getting to become the upper echelon of society, which is exactly what the Gemara said 2,000 years ago. One of the Chachamim, his son, had a near-death experience, and he came back and he told him, it was Rabbi Yossi's son, came to him and says, so what do you see, son? He says, well, all of the leaders in this world are actually on the bottom of the barrel over there. They're not doing so good. And all of the low people in the world here, the tzaddikim that are just, barely making ends meet but are toiling in Torah, they're the leaders in the world. It's upside down. His father says, not upside down. That's the real world. In the real world, the tzaddikim are on top, and these people that pretend to be leaders over here, they're on the bottom. They're in Gehenom. They're on the bottom of their feet, as a Kadosh Baruch Hu burns every single one of them to nothing, to become dust under the tzaddikim's feet. That's the reality, Rabotai. People that do not glue themselves to the right ideology are simply going to become wastes of lives. Waste of lives. There's no appropriate way of saying it. There's simply no appropriate way. You'd speak to people on the street, what's their topic of discussion? It's either women, money, or some type of physical pleasure. That's it. Nothing else to talk about. Or they talk about other people that are fulfilling their own desires. Women, money, and some type of physical desire. That's it. That's society today. Now, if you ask this guy, if you ask me, is he right for doing what he's doing? Technically, in his world of philosophy and just enjoying the moment of a physical body, technically he's right. Why should you suffer? Go do some drugs until you simply die. Why should you suffer anything? But a person that lives a life that means something, a person that's trying to fulfill a life with some type of purpose, obviously cannot live such a life doing drugs and ruining their brain and ruining their body and ruining their whole life. But, Rabotai Karim, what do you have to compete against? You have either Columbia University or you have the other universities that probably do the same exact thing, just haven't gotten as popular about it. Or you have Torah education that you could do simply at home, or you could do at a yeshiva if you could find a kosher one next to you. The reality is the choice is relatively clear, and it's becoming clearer. Now the Chazon Ish has taught us that Hashem runs the entire world, including the world of these wicked, ugly people that are destroying society as we see it. The ones that are these lefty, liberal-minded, just physical pleasure, eat and drink, tomorrow we may die type of mentality, as the prophet Isaiah says. That's in essence the mentality of the wicked. Eat and drink, enjoy everything physically because maybe tomorrow we're going to die. You only live once mentality. Those people are ruining society, they're ruining the world, but that's nothing new. They're not new, they've always been around, they're just a little bit more influential today than they were perhaps in the past. Point being is, that world, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is running it, and he's allowing these people to ruin the world, to ruin society, in essence, to make us have a little bit more of a difficult time in certain things, and also to give the rest of us a test. Where do you want to be? Do you want to be a crackhead? You want to be addicted to cocaine? You want to be homosexual? You want to be a pedophile? You want to be a murderer? You want to just be a person that fulfills any type of desire you have? Or do you want to be Adam? What's Adam? A human being. A human being that has Yirat Shamayim. That's Adam. That's Adam. A person that knows that there's somebody above him watching and judging every second. That's Emunah. Bitachon is simply, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does all types of things that you may or may not understand. There is no possibility that you'll understand everything he does, but what you are obligated to do is to get yourself to a point where you know with full knowledge and have belief with full heart that everything that he does is ultimately the best possibility available to you. That's Emunah, that's Bitachon. Now after that he taught us that how, in order for us to arrive at such conclusions that Hashem is the one running the world and that everything that he does is good, he says you cannot arrive to those conclusions with pure logic. Impossible. Why? Whatever logic you have is biased based on your own life, your own experiences, and you are not the world. So you have to understand that the one who created the world and knows everything that's in and out of it, he is the one that has all the information, and he is the one that's going to tell you how to get to that conclusion. And that way is learn Torah, which means the halachot, the story, the logistics of everything goes behind it, as well as MUSSAR, as well as character development. Learn how to apply the laws in order to improve your life. So now in the 7th section, in the 3rd chapter, the Chazon Ish continues. And he says the following, חכמי היראה מצאו את השפעת הלימוד בשני סוגים. The English translation is not precise, so I will, if anyone that has the book, you'll hear me change a few words here, where the English translation says, the learned in matters of moral teachings found that there are two types of Torah learning that influence a person. He really does not say the ones that are learned in moral teachings, but rather the wise men among the fear of Hashem, meaning those that are not just wise, but they are the utmost experts in Yirat Shamayim, in fear of the Almighty. Those wise men, those specific sages that have the most Yirat Shamayim, they have found, which in essence is referring to the highest level of tzaddikim, they have found that there are two types of Torah learning that influence a person. Many times you will see that there are certain people that they go to school, they go to yeshiva, they learn on their own, they watch some videos, and really they don't change. Aside from getting a few extra wrinkles, maybe getting married, maybe this, maybe that, not so much changes. Which, as a side note, by the way, a big mazal tov to my two students who, Baruch Hashem, got married today, Moshe and Liora. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless them. Mazal tov, bracha, atzlacha, chaim tovim, arukim, meleim Torah, mitzvot, v'gemilut chasadim. Ve'zera yikaman, BeEzrat Hashem, all of the brachot and yeshuot. Always wonderful to see our students, BeEzrat Hashem, get married, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu having mercy on us too, giving us a small little piece in their amazing journey that they're doing to get closer to Hashem. So here we see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a Torah, but sometimes, although he says this Torah is life, this Torah is the cure for all spiritual cancer, this Torah is the ultimate wisdom, this Torah is life itself, sometimes you'll see that certain people learn Torah, but nothing changes. They're the same ox they started. She's the same putza that she started 20 years after she started watching Shulin. Nothing changes. She still walks around immodest. She still steals. She still lies. She still does everything. He steals. He does everything. Nothing changes. Unfortunately, those people, they usually are the ones that cause the most amount of damage in society. For the ones that are actually real religious, the ones that are authentic. And the reason why is because many times the bad stuff that you see in the news, whether it's the people that give Judaism a bad name by force-feeding their kids a shidduch that they don't want. Oh, listen, he's a good guy, marry him. Yeah, but I don't want to. No, you have to marry him anyway, because if you don't marry him, then his family is going to reject us and the community is going to reject us. And in essence, they force their daughter to marry some guy, which is really not forced like the Arabs, but peer pressure for an 18, 19, 20-year-old girl might as well be physical pressure. And unfortunately, many times you see young girls or even young men marry the person that they don't really want to marry. But as a result of peer pressure or family pressure or society pressure or community pressure, and it ends up in a divorce. And of course, it ends up in a lot of other things. And what does the media look for? They look for these people. They look for these people that have had enough of all of the pressure and have learned the wrong version of Judaism from people who don't know Judaism if it hit them in the face. All they know is how to look Jewish. All they know is how to say Jewish things, but they know not a single thing about Judaism. And what ends up happening with these people is they end up going not only off the derech, they become the advocate of the Satan himself. They become the representative of the Satan himself. They go completely off. They become more secular than the secular people. So these types of people, they don't just come from nothing. It's because they were around people that were fakers. And unfortunately, this has always been the case. There's been people like this, but today it seems like the numbers have been growing. So that's why I always tell people, the Jewish people are not always the best representatives of Judaism. If you want a representation of Judaism, you can't always look at all Jews. You have to look either at the tzaddikim, the ones that are truly righteous, the gedolei ador, the ones that toil over Torah. You want to go see either those people, or you want to simply look at the Torah. This is the rules, this is the stories, this is what it says. That's a tzaddik. That's it. Pick one or the other. Your average guy working at the supermarket wearing a kippah may or may not be a good representation of Judaism. Your average person, neighbor that has a kisui rosh or a wig or whatever, may or may not be the best representation of Judaism. You can't necessarily judge Judaism based on people, because again, people are people. If a person is living in accordance to the Torah 100%, which means not only fulfilling the laws of the holidays and modesty and so on, but also has modesty of the mouth, also has modesty of behavior, also has integrity when it comes to business, and so on and so forth, then you have something to say. If you see such a person doing something wrong, then you have something to say. But the reality is you're not going to see those people do something wrong. Why? Because those people are tzaddikim for a reason, because they make certain sacrifices. If you see that the rabbi that you use just got caught for really embezzling drugs from one city to another, or millions and millions of dollars, and trying to cheat the government, if you see people doing things like that, don't think that that's Judaism, because that's a person. That's a person. Maybe it's a one-time failure. Maybe it's a systemic issue. I'm not really sure. Point being is, don't judge Judaism by simply a single person or even a single family within a community. You have to look at things more precisely, just like you would anything else. You don't judge an entire hospital because of one bad doctor. You don't, judge an entire police force because of a few killers they have among them. You don't judge an entire country just because they have a senile president. You don't do that. Why? Because you have other things that are perhaps good and other things that are bad. And you have to see an overall encompassing picture. So the Chazon Ish is telling us that the wise men, the wise in Yirat Shamayim, the wise in what a Kadosh Baruch Hu says is dear to him, which is the fear of the Almighty, those wise men have found that there are two types of Torah learning that influence a person. Even though there are some people that learn Torah and nothing changes, this is not pertaining to them. This is the Torah that actually changes people. Those people that learn Torah and nothing changes, this has nothing to do with them. Why? Because had they been learning one of these two Torahs that we're about to discuss, they wouldn't be who they are. They would actually change. What are these two Torahs? One is learning about the obligation to observe the law and act according to it. Simple. Learning what your obligation is. You know that there is a holiday. You're not just saying, okay, what's Purim? Okay, Purim is wear a costume, mishloach manot. Okay, great. Is that the only obligation? Is that the only thing is? Get some chocolates back, which by the way, you're not really fulfilling the mitzvah with just giving people chocolate. You have to give them something that they could do at least a mezonot blessing on and a drink. So just as a food for thought, if you're sending your friends just chocolates and a drink, you're not fulfilling the mitzvah. It has to be two things that are considered like a sauda. But you could find more information about that from my other shurim or online. Point being is that a person that learns about the obligation that he has, learns about this law, is going to know, okay, there's more to Purim than just wearing a costume and sending mishloach manot. I also have to help the poor. I also have to know, do I need to help the poor specifically now? I mean, surely I'm obligated to help the poor as much as possible throughout the whole year. Why is it now? And why do we even celebrate it? Why are we allowed to drive here and we're not allowed to drive other places? Meaning that a person needs to learn more and more about this law and why you're even doing it. And not just be a robot. Because robots eventually malfunction. People that are robots eventually malfunction. Just like your vacuum cleaner is not going to work forever, and your computer is not going to work forever, and any other machinery is not going to work forever, if you are a spiritual robot, you will eventually fail. Your avodat Hashem will eventually malfunction. Why? Robots don't last forever. You have to be more than a robot if you want to serve Hashem forever. You have to try harder. You have to do more. Now, Chazon Ish is saying here that in order to do more, first type of thing is to learn more about your obligation to observe the law and, in essence, to act according to it. Why do I need to do all this? So one, if a person does such a thing, one develops a live awareness of what he should be aware of. He learns to pay attention to who is commanding all of this? Hashem, the master of the world, creator of all creation. See, when a person learns what he needs to do, learn what she needs to do, one of the main things that you will end up with, if you really delve into what the law is, who, what, where, why, you ask the real questions, but not just ask the question and expect every rabbi to be Google. Go and chase the information. You know, many times people are frustrating because they ask too simple of a question. Now, since you don't really know where everybody stands, as a rabbi, you have to pretty much answer everybody. You have to answer everybody, even though sometimes the questions are really questions that, I'm not saying you should know it, but you had other places to look. You could have just simply typed, what is Shabbat? You could have just simply typed, is this kosher? But you chose to send a question, which again, we're happy to answer people's questions, but the reality is, what if you had this question on Shabbat? What if you had this question and I couldn't answer it? Or the rabbi that you're sending a message to couldn't answer it? The reality is, Rabotai, is that sometimes a person needs to know they have to toil a little bit more, push themselves a little bit more to find the answers, and not just expect everything on demand. Many times people, they ask questions as a result of just simply laziness. They're too lazy to look elsewhere. They're too lazy to look elsewhere. You're not going to get to fulfill your mission in the world if you're lazy. That's one of the best tools that the Satan uses, especially on this generation. He makes a person lazy when it comes to Avodat Hashem and really many other matters, but especially Avodat Hashem, serving of Hashem. So when a person develops a live awareness of what he's supposed to know, and now he learns to pay attention to who's the one that's saying all of this, who's the one that's commanding all of these mitzvot, which is Hashem, the master of all creation, the creator of all creations, automatically everything changes. Why does everything change? If I said something, then I'm just a human being, flesh and blood. Eventually we'll go back to dust, the same place that I came from. So what if I said it? When somebody says, yeah, but your opinion is, I said, no. If you were talking about Wall Street, yes, exactly. All I gave is my opinion. But if you're talking about Torah, I'm giving you sources from the Torah. It's not my opinion. Oh, well, what's the difference? It's a big difference. If what I'm telling you is written in a book by the sages or the Torah itself, it's no longer my opinion. It's God's opinion. It's God's opinion. Now, there's a big difference here. Why? My opinion you can discount. My opinion you can ignore. My opinion you can simply reject. But if God says it, there's nothing for you to do about it other than to accept it. And that's it. Or just simply consider yourself insane. Once you realize that God is the one that said, keep Shabbat, and you choose to ignore that anyway, you simply should, admit yourself to a mental institution. So the only time that a person continues to violate the Torah is usually as a result of ignorance of the law. But as we all know, ignorance of the law does not absolve you from the crime. If you walk around in certain places in the world without a mask, they give you a fine, $500, $1,000 or more. Sometimes they'll put you in jail. Now if you tell them, no, I didn't know, are they not going to arrest you? Of course they're going to arrest you. What are they going to tell you? Ignorance of the law does not absolve you from its consequences. Doesn't absolve you from the consequences. You live in this country. The second you landed in the airport in such and such country, you accepted the entire law even without knowing it. So long as you want to be in this country, you have to comply with the laws. Yeah, but I didn't have time to study all of it. Then maybe you shouldn't have come. Maybe you shouldn't have come until you studied the entire Constitution. Or make sure you find out what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do before you do it. Ignorance is not going to help you. The judge will still put you in jail. If you think that you can come to the United States and start selling drugs to people, start going into partnership with this degenerate professor, I can't get enough of it. This degenerate professor from Columbia University, Carl Hart, Shem Reshaim Yerkav, you want to go into business with him, and instead of sell books, sell him crack. you think that you're going to be able to do that, at least in today's world, and get away with it, you got something coming to you. Why? Because at least today, it's illegal. And if the cop sees you, unless he's also a student of Carl Hart, and he's a crackhead himself, he'll arrest you, put you in jail, and when you go to the judge, unless he's also a student of Carl Hart, he's going to put you in jail for a really, really long time. Why? It's illegal. Yeah, but I didn't know, and Carl Hart wrote a book about it. Okay, well, sorry, you should have known. Carl Hart is a degenerate, but he's a degenerate with a degree. So he gets to get away with it until society wakes up and realizes that people are simply destroying society. So to know that a Kadosh Baruch Hu is the one who said it changes the picture altogether. Because once I know that Hashem is the one that said everything, that's it. There's no questions, there's no debates, there's no nothing. This is sometimes one of the things that I try to explain to people is that you have to be very careful when you talk. The Mishnah in Avot says, Chachamim tizaru b'divrechem. Chachamim, you have to be careful with your words. Why? The Mishnah in Avot says, because if you don't choose your words carefully, you can lead your students to Gehenom. Now, Gehenom could mean, literally, tell people that they're allowed to drive on Shabbat as long as they're driving to shul. That's obviously going to lead them and the rabbi to Gehenom because you're not allowed to drive on Shabbat. Only place you're allowed to drive to is a hospital to save somebody's life. Other than that, you're not allowed to drive anywhere. And even after you drove somebody to save their life to the hospital, you're not allowed to come back. You have to stay in the hospital until Motzei Shabbat, unless you're a doctor and there's leniency for that. But the point being is that if the rabbi is telling you to violate the Torah, that's not necessarily going to help you so much in Shamayim. You're still going to get punished for it because you're still obligated to learn. But nonetheless, that's one way of Gehenom. But there is another way of Gehenom. What's another way of Gehenom? Another way is if the rabbi, whoever you're learning from, is really not aware, an expert, careful, whatever you want to use, enough with their words, and they just spit things out without double checking. This happens, unfortunately, sometimes. Hopefully not a lot, but it does happen sometimes. And I try to tell people, you have to be very, very careful with your words. If you're going to teach people Torah, if you're going, whether you're a rabbi or not, doesn't matter. Once you start speaking Torah, that's it. You're judged by all of the laws of the Torah. This is why when people like Dennis Prager and Manis Friedman and Ben Shapiro and all of these other people, when they say things that are against the Torah, that are antithetical to the Torah, we go and protest with full fire as much as we possibly can, because it doesn't matter if they're rabbis or they're not rabbis. Once you go to the public and you say things in the name of the Torah, you're in essence saying that what you're saying was at Mount Sinai. And if it's not, you are misleading the masses, and especially when you have a huge audience. So people like Dennis Prager that lie for a living, he in essence presents himself as a moral person. But anyone that watches my channel and reviews it carefully knows a couple of things. Number one, we showed how he's a liar from his own words. He's a heretic apikolos. But also, we also showed a different video where he actually lies even to his own crowd. Where even if you go to his website, Prager University, you'll see on the bottom of the website that it has a counter where it says that he has something like 4.5 billion views on his videos. And in the small print it says that these views are an accumulation of views from YouTube and his Facebook channels, and that's how he gets 4.5 billion views. Now if you go to his YouTube page, you click on the about, and you'll see he doesn't have quite 4.5 billion views. He has, I don't know, he has a lot of views, but not 4.5 billion views. You don't have 4.5 billion views. So you have to see, okay, so wait a minute, we're missing a few billion here. Is he lying? Is he this? So what have we found? We found that he's a liar. How do we find he's a liar? Because the counter that he has is not connected not to YouTube or to Facebook. It's connected to the date on your computer. Meaning that the guy is a filthy liar, not only to the Jewish people and any other religion out there that listens to him in the name of the Torah, but also to the other people that consider themselves conservatives and moral and so on. He's a filthy liar. And that's something that actually is proven by the Torah. Someone that is a kfui tovah, is a ungrateful to the Kadosh Baruch Hu, will ultimately be grateful to the people and vice versa. So These types of people, when they represent the Torah, whether they're rabbis or not, is irrelevant. Once you say something in the name of the Torah, if it's misleading people, it's our obligation and your obligation to protest as much as possible to shed light on the darkness that they're creating. That's a reality. That's a reality. That's an obligation. There's an obligation to rebuke. There's an obligation to protest. These are two completely separate obligations. And the Gemara in Masechet Sanhedrin says, in makom sheyesh chilul Hashem, en kavod larav. In a place that there's a desecration of Hashem's name, where someone is distorting the Torah or making fun of it or anything like that, even a honor to a rabbi is not considered. This is Gemara Masechet Sanhedrin. So we see here, Rabotai Yekarim, that whether a person is a rabbi or not a rabbi, once he says things in the name of the Torah, he has to be very, very careful. And unfortunately, sometimes people are not careful enough. This happens, unfortunately, sometimes. And I'll give you an example. Example is one thing that I just literally happened in the last 24 hours, and this has happened before, but these Hashem gives us experiences usually before the shul that He wants us to mention. A woman that listens to our shurim contacts me and says, listen, Rabbi, I saw in one of your shurim that you mentioned that a woman has to, aside from the 7 clean days, is once she's nida, she aside from the 7 clean days, she waits 4 days before she starts counting. But my rabbi said I have to wait 5 days. So maybe the rabbi wants to correct his shiur and change that or something. And I said, no, there's the halacha is that Sephardic people wait 4 days before they count to 7. Ashkenazi people wait 5 days before they count to 7. So I thought that this would end there. Understanding that, yes, maybe I didn't know who she is. Maybe she is Ashkenazia, and that's why her rabbi appropriately taught her that she has to wait 5 days. Before the 7 days, total 12 days, minimum 5 days. Sometimes it's longer depending on the woman's period. Some women have it for much longer, but it's minimum of 5 days, plus 7 days. But it could be longer than 5 days, but no less than 5 days if you're Ashkenazi. With Sephardi, it's no less than 4 days. It could be more, it could be 7 days, but it's no less than 4 days plus the 7. So I thought that it's going to end by explaining to her that there's a different tradition between the Ashkenazi and the Sephardi poskim on the 5 and the 4. The 7 is unanimous across the board. She comes back to me and says, no. My rabbi is a Sephardi rabbi, and I'm a Sephardi also, and he's a very reliable rabbi, and he says you're wrong. He says it's 5 days for both Sephardis and Ashkenazi. Now, I could just ignore the email, press delete, move on with my life. Or I could correct the people. I have to correct them. Why? Because this is the type of halacha that if you don't know the right one, it can create a divorce. You can create such huge shlom bayit problems that are unnecessary that literally a woman can get divorced. She can end up getting thrown out of the house by her husband as a result of her misjudgment. But it's not even her fault, it's the rabbi's fault. So, look, there's a book that I have, Tarat Yosef, which was written by the Gaon Rav Avraham Yosef, which was one of the sons of Rav Ovadia Yosef, Alav Shalom. Now, Rav Avraham Yosef was a genius. He's a genius. And he wrote a book based on the Psak of Rav Ovadia, based on the Sfaradim and so on, but he also includes the Ashkenazim. And this was recently translated to English as well. It has English and Hebrew to anyone that wants to purchase this book. You go on the internet, and you could buy this book. It's called Tarat Yosef. Now, this is for Jews or for women that are converting to Judaism. It's not for Noahites to buy this book just to learn about Tarat Mishpacha. This is one of the laws that it's unique for Am Yisrael. It's not for non-Jews. You're learning this halachot is not going to do anything good for you. So, with that being said, you go to page 68, chapter 2. And he says exactly this. The waiting that before she can carry on the Hefsek Tara, which is those 7 days, even if her flow of blood has come to an end, a woman cannot carry out her Hefsek Tara unless 4 days have passed since the flow began. For example, if she has discharged the blood on Saturday night or on Sunday, even if the flow ended that day, she cannot perform an Hefsek Tara until Wednesday. And her count of 7 days begins the following day, the following Thursday. Of course, if her flow continues longer than 4 days, she must wait until it ceases, even if it takes many days. And then it continues later on, again mentioning the Hefsek Tara is 4 days. Several places in this specific section, it mentions it at least a half a dozen times, 4 days, 4 days, 4 days, 4 days, not 5 days. But then it says at the end, this is the not only the chokhmah, but the humility of the Chachamim. They don't only mention their opinion, they also mention the Ashkenazi opinion. Same thing with the Ashkenazim, the Chachamim. They also mention sometimes the Sephardi opinion. So he says, this mentioned practice is for Sfaradim, for Sephardic Jews. However, the Ashkenazim always wait 5 days, where the woman has these different conditions they're talking about. Sephardi women who in the past used to the Ashkenazi practice can change to Sephardic, but doesn't need to make Atarat Nedarim. So here we see clearly, as we stated, Baruch Shekivanu, that Sephardi women wait 4 days minimum. If the period continues for longer, if the bleeding is for longer than 4 days, obviously it's longer. But the minimum is 4 days. Some women have it easy; they only bleed for 2 days, so they still have to wait 4 days. Still have to wait 4 days. That's 4 days minimum. But if she's Ashkenazi, it's 5 days. Now that so-called reliable rabbi, I told her, listen, he's wrong. Here's the proof. I sent her some pictures of the book. He should review the halacha more carefully and really think before he speaks. Why? Because if this woman, I don't know how old she is, I don't know how long she's married, I don't know what kind of husband she has. If she has, unfortunately, some of the husbands that I get to deal with these days, that they're literally, all they can think of is being with their wives, they can't think of anything else in their life, then that can create a divorce. Why? Because a woman that's not available to her husband when he wants it to be, and it's because of a mistake, can literally lead to a divorce. So here we see, Rabotai Karim, that sometimes a person needs to know what he doesn't know, and know how to say, I don't know. I don't know. It's important to say I don't know just as much as it is to give the right answer. Now, if the opinion was just my opinion, then who cares? Everything I just said, delete, go to a different lecture, go watch some ducks cross the road. But if the opinion that I said is from the Chachamim, who are in essence representing a Kadosh Baruch Hu, there's no arguing. And that's in essence what the Chazon Ish is saying. The first type of Torah that changes a person is when a person learns the halachot with a mindset of who said this. It's Rav Ovadia. Rav Ovadia is representing Hashem. Rav Ovadia, he got it from his rabbi. He got it from his rabbi, all the way to Moshe Rabbeinu, who got it directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In essence, Rav Ovadia is representing what HaKadosh Baruch Hu said. Or Chavetz Chaim. Chavetz Chaim got it from his rabbi, Moshe Rabbeinu. Chavetz Chaim represents HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So when a person understands that what he's reading in the book is a representative of Hashem himself, that's it. There's no food for thought. Let me think about it. I don't know if I agree with you. Let me double check. This is it. You're always allowed to ask questions. But you have to know, are you looking for answers or are you looking for excuses? Because there are sometimes people that are looking for excuses. They don't get the answers that they want, so they look for a different rabbi. He doesn't give them the answer that they want, so they look for another rabbi, another rabbi, another rabbi until they get the answer that they want. That's obviously a horrible situation. So, a person that understands who is the one that's giving the rules is then going to acknowledge, the Chazon Ish says. He's going to acknowledge the sin of ignoring Hashem's existence and the extent of the punishment for it. Yes, the Chazon Ish talks about punishment. Yes, the Chachamim talk about punishment. Often. Very, very often. Why? Yirat Shamayim, the basic level of it, is all about punishment. If you're not afraid of getting a traffic ticket or you losing your license, you're not going to listen to any rule. If you're not afraid of losing your loved ones, you're not going to consider their opinion or their well-being in any way, shape, or form. If you're not afraid of losing all your money, you're going to be the most dangerous person to do business with in the world. If you're not afraid, you are no different than a terrorist that's a suicide bomber. That's it. That's the reality. Being afraid is something good. It's good for society for people to be afraid, because if they're afraid of something, that means that you can have people under some type of control where they're not going to completely lose their mind and eat each other up. That's why even having a government and a good social system is something that Jewish people need to pray for. Even if that government system is in the exile, we still need to pray for it. Why? Because the Mishnah in Avot says we have to pray for the governments and for their well-being, because if it wasn't for them, people would literally eat each other in the streets. They'd steal from each other, they'd rape each other, they'd kill each other, they'd do everything to each other, just like the Dor Mabul, the generation of the flood. So when a person has acknowledgement of where the rules are coming from, and he realizes that there's a sin of ignoring this creator, he then acknowledges the extent of the punishment he's going to get for it. What is the extent of the punishment? The extent of the punishment, Rabotai, is something atrocious. But it's not as atrocious as the shiur about Gehenom that we've given, and things like that we discussed, but rather, it's atrocious in this world. You see, the story of Purim, for those that have not learned the story deeply enough, seems like it was a story that took maybe a few months. But the truth is, Rabotai, the story took 10 years. Megillat Esther is a time span from the beginning of the story until the end, 10 years. 10 years is what it took. Initially, the story began in a time after the destruction of the first Bet HaMikdash. There was a prophecy that the second Bet HaMikdash will be built 70 years later. And no one knew the exact calculation other than HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because no one knew where the counting began. But Achashverosh did his own accounting, and according to his math, the 70 years have passed, and since Hashem did not build a second Bet HaMikdash, he believed, this Achashverosh, that he will be the strongest ruler in the world, just like his predecessor, Nebuchadnezzar, and thereby the Jews will not get control ever again, and that's it, it's over. So as a celebration of the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash and its not being rebuilt, Achashverosh had a feast that lasted 6 months. 6 months celebrating that the Bet HaMikdash was not only destroyed, but also that he has control over 127 countries, and the Jews are not going to take it back because Hashem has left. Hashem has abandoned the Jews. That's what Achashverosh was celebrating for 6 months. So now that we know this, we see that the end of the story comes 10 years later when salvation comes. But going from there until the end of the 10 years, obviously we know there's a lot going on. The very next thing after those 180 days, which you could learn a little bit more about in the Midrash Rabbah, Esther Rabbah, chapter 1, talks about it. Now, the Midrash says that the ministering angels, Malchei HaSharet, were angry. Were angry that this idol worshiper, this Achashverosh, is celebrating the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash, is celebrating that Hashem has not rebuilt it, even though the time hasn't come. It just came according to his foolish calculations. And he came to Hashem and said, Ribono shel Olam, how could it be that this wicked person gets to celebrate, this Rasha gets to celebrate that the temple has been destroyed and have a feast, and your beloved children are in exile still? How could it be? So Midrash says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu responded to the Malachei HaSharet, to the ministering angels, with an answer that is not understandable to humans. What's the answer? Give days against days. That's the answer HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the angels. Give days against days. Give days against days. What does this mean? Of course, the angels did not need Rashi and the rest of the sages to give them a commentary. We do. What does it mean? Give days against days. So, Rabbi Yaron Alav Shalom, in his Sefer, writes that he got an answer not only from the Gemara in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, page 17b, but also from a Chacham named Rav Mendelssohn of Komimiyut. And he told him that this Gemara in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, page 17b, says that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends abundance to the world, he doesn't take it back. He doesn't take it back. Once he sends something, he doesn't take it back. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu told the angels, I gave my children a day of serenity. I gave my children a day to wear fine clothing and to go sit around at an elegant table, eating a royal feast, drinking good wine, singing with their families. I gave them a day to elevate the pleasant things of this world by using them in purity and sanctity. And the name of this day is Shabbat. But instead of honoring my Shabbat, they chose to work. As the verse says in the prophet Nehemiah, chapter 13, verse 15. In those days I saw in Judah people treading wine presses on Shabbat and loading donkeys with all kinds of burdens, which they brought to Yerushalayim on a Shabbat day. Here we see, by the way, in the Tanakh, the laws of muktzeh and not being allowed to work and not being allowed to do business. These laws are not just rabbinical laws created by the rabbis. These 39 melachot are in the Torah itself. You just need to know how to find them and where to find them. But the point being here is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says in the name of the prophet, look, instead of feasting on the Shabbat day, instead of honoring the Shabbat day, elevating the world that I created and using the beautiful creation that I made in a holy way on my Shabbat, what did they do? They did business on Shabbat. They watched Super Bowl on Shabbat. They watched basketball on Shabbat. They did all types of things on Shabbat, but they definitely didn't honor my Shabbat. So God continued saying, therefore, I give days against days, against the Shabbat days, that my children desecrated. Achashverosh has days of serenity to make feasts and show off his wealth. As it says in Megillat Esther, in those days when King Achashverosh sat on his royal throne, he made a wine banquet. We see here, Rabotai Yekarim, that in other words, Rabbi again says, Shabbat is already the shefa, the gift of Shabbat, and all of the abundance that comes with Shabbat was already sent into the world. But once the Jewish people stopped keeping Shabbat, that abundance was given to Achashverosh. The wealth of the non-Jews in the world today, the power of the non-Jews in the world today, all of these things, in essence, is what Hashem really wants to give the Jewish people. It's not that He wants to make all the non-Jews homeless or something like that. They're supposed to have also their own shefa. But we are supposed to have a lot more. We're supposed to have a Jewish king, the Mashiach in the world. We're supposed to rule the world, in essence, as the Jewish people. But we're not. In fact, we're being persecuted everywhere we go. Yes, there's a few of us that have a lot of money, but in reality, most of the people that have a lot of money that are Jewish have nothing remotely close to being Jewish. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, when the Jewish people desecrate my Shabbat, that abundance that I give to the Jewish people as a whole, not to the individuals, as a whole, I give it to the Goyim. And not just any Goyim, the enemies of the Jews. So the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat, page 118, also brought by Rabbi again, says that whoever delights the Shabbat is given an inheritance without bounds. This is the inheritance of Yaakov Avinu, who is the only forefather to whom Hashem said in Sefer Bereshit, chapter 28, verse 14, you shall spread out powerfully to the west, east, north, and south, meaning without bounds. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the descendants of Yaakov unlike the descendants of Avraham and Yitzhak, which in essence Avraham, he was the father of Yitzhak. Yitzhak is the father of Yaakov. So really the ultimate forefather of Am Yisrael is Yaakov. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave Yaakov a unique promise. He says, your descendants will have the ability to spread with no limitation. East, west, north, south, everywhere, no limitation. Why? I'm going to give you the Shabbat. That Shabbat is the source of all blessings. So when Am Yisrael, the Gemara says, when Am Yisrael keeps the Shabbat, they are promised this promise of Yaakov, which is that they'll inherit literally a blessing of abundance with no limitation. And we see this also in the prophet Isaiah. Prophet Isaiah chapter 58, verse 13 and 14. Where the prophet says in the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if because it is Shabbat, you restrain your foot from accomplishing your own needs on my holy day, if you proclaim Shabbat a delight, and you honor it by not engaging in your own affairs, pursuing your occupations, or speaking about them, then you will delight in Hashem, and I will mount you astride the heights of the world, and I will provide you with the inheritance of your forefather Yaakov. Here Rabbi again brings an extraordinary chidush, connecting the Gemara to the prophets. The Gemara says that if we observe Shabbat, we're going to get the blessing of Yaakov. And then Rabbi again says, look where it is in the prophets. The prophet is using the same exact language. You want the blessing of Yaakov Avinu? You have to keep Shabbat. But what's keeping Shabbat? Just not driving? No. Why? What's keeping Shabbat? Just not cooking? No. That's just some of the things you do. What's keeping Shabbat? Shabbat was created specifically to learn Torah. If you don't learn Torah, Rabotai Yekarim, you're not really having Oneg Shabbat. Furthermore, if you're speaking business on Shabbat, you are a Mechalel Shabbat. Yes, just like the verse says. Not only not engaging about in business, but also it says speaking about them. You're not allowed to talk business. Someone asked me just a few days ago before Shabbat, hey Rabbi, is it okay if I speak about the stock market on Shabbat? I said, if you want to be a Mechalel Shabbat, yes, you can speak about stocks. But if you want to keep Shabbat, you can't talk about stocks. Oh, what about real estate? No. What about work? No. Why? Not allowed. Not allowed. Yeah, but Rabbi, how is it that when I go to Beit Knesset, half the people over there are talking about Shabbat, are talking about business? I said, that's not a good thing. Why is it not a good thing? Because the Gemara, Masechet Megillah, page 28b, says that a synagogue where the people are doing calculations, meaning they're talking about business. Oh, what'd you buy this for? $1 million? $2 million? Oh, you should have got it for $5 million, $3 million, this million, that million. Oh, you bought that stock, you bought this stock, I'll sell you this, I'll sell you. They talk business in shul. A shul that has people talk business. Listen to this carefully. I didn't make this up. You can go look at the Gemara yourself. Megillah 28b. A synagogue that has people making calculations, meaning they're doing business. Talking business, not even necessarily doing the transaction, just talking business. In synagogue will eventually have corpses overnight. Chachamim says, what do you mean have corpses overnight? He says, because they're doing calculations of money in a synagogue, they'll eventually have to do calculations of the dead bodies inside that shul. Because the shul that has business in it will turn into a morgue. Hashem Yishmor V'Yatzil. Rabotai Yekarim, the sages did not mention these things just to get a clip on YouTube. The sages said these things to warn us because these are the things they saw. These are the things they knew. When you go to a synagogue and you see people talking business, run away. Get out of there. It's not a synagogue. Get out of there. Talk to the rabbi, tell him, listen, people are talking business. If he doesn't care, doesn't know nothing about it, don't go back to that synagogue. Pray at home. Why? A synagogue that people talk business in is a danger zone. Danger zone. Want to talk business? Go outside. Go outside. Needless to say, if it's done on Shabbat, this is not even talking on Shabbat. This is any synagogue and any moment you're talking business in the synagogue, the Gemara is referring to. But if you talk about business on Shabbat, it doesn't even matter if it's inside the synagogue or not. It's a sin anywhere you do it. But you see, Rabotai, Chachamim knew this. And sometimes money blinded different people. Sometimes those people were Chachamim too. When Mordechai, in the Midrash in Esther Rabbah, chapter 7, 7:18, the Midrash Rabbah says that Mordechai was the Gdol Hador, and he was a member of the Sanhedrin and the Great Assembly. When he found out that even the religious Jews of that generation, which most people were religious in that time, even the rabbis of that generation wanted to go to the party by Achashverosh. He just had a celebration for 180 days. Now he wants to have a after party, a little bit more of a feast, where he's going to have some more celebrations, where he's going to cater to everyone. And the Jews says, listen, we got to go. Why you got to go? Why? He's the king, new president. We got to honor him. No, you don't have to. You don't have to go. He's not obligating anybody to go. You don't have to go. No, but we have to. We have to be good social terms. We got to spend some time at the White House. Maybe menorah, maybe this, maybe that. Mordechai says, you're not allowed to go. You're not allowed to go. You're not allowed to go. It's a place of Chilul Hashem. He's celebrating the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash. He's celebrating the fact that we don't have a Bet HaMikdash. He's going against Hashem. You're going to go celebrate with him? Listen, there's going to be kosher food there. That was their response. When Mordechai, who's called Mordechai Yehudi, he's the first time in the entire Tanakh that the word Yehudi, Jew, is mentioned, is after Mordechai. Why? The Gemara in Masechet Megillah, page 13, or page 12, says that Mordechai was a kofer be'avodah zarah. He was a heretic in idol worship. Anyone that fights against idol worship gets called a Jew. That's who gets called a Jew. That's the righteous Jew. That's who a Jew is. A Jew is someone who goes and fights against idolatry. Now, aside from the fact that Mordechai also had long prayers, the Ben Ish Chai says. He had long prayers. And you can see that this Jew from a while away, but he wasn't the only one with peyot. There was other people with peyot. So how come Mordechai is the first one in the entire Tanakh called a Jew? Because Mordechai fought against idolatry. He fought against idolatry, Rabotai Yekarim. Same thing with Batya Pat Paro. Batya wasn't really her name, but she got named by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why did she get named by HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Because she also went against idolatry. Who was the idolatry? The idolatry of Egypt, which included her own father. And she ended up marrying Kalev. Kalev, who went against the spies. He was one of the 12 spies, and him and Yeshua ben Nun went against the other 10 spies. So it was midah keneged midah, measure for measure. Since Batya went against the idolatry of her father, she got to marry a tzaddik named Kalev, who went against other heretics. They got each other. They married each other, Baruch Hashem. Mordechai, on the other hand, he's called a Jew. Why is he called a Jew? Because he went against idolatry. And Mordechai also has a reason of why he came into being. But before we get into that, it says that Mordechai, who was the Gdol Hador, warned Am Yisrael, do not go to this party. And their only excuse was, there's kosher food there. We're not celebrating the idolatry. We're not going to be, we're just going to show face. We're just going to show face for politics. And 18,500 Jews attended that party. 18,500 Jews. And the Midrash says that because they did not listen to the Gdol Hador, Mordechai, and needless to say, because they were part of a Chilul Hashem, 9 years later, Haman gets the top position in Shushan, in the kinghood of Achashverosh and passes the decree to wipe out all of the Jews in the world. But why was HaKadosh Baruch Hu so angry with us? Okay, so we went to the White House. Okay, so he was celebrating things against the Torah. Is he the first one? Is he the last one? What else was so intolerable about this party that HaKadosh Baruch Hu simply couldn't take? You see, HaKadosh Baruch Hu uses our enemies merely as tools in order to punish the Jewish people. The Nazis, the Turks, the Spaniards, the Greeks, the Romans, those are all simply tools that Hashem uses in order to punish us when we don't act well, when we don't follow the Torah. But the problem here, Rabotai Karim, is that Am Yisrael did not only not listen to the Torah, they enjoyed the sin. They enjoyed, the Gemara says, in Masechet Megillah, page 12a, that they enjoyed the feast. They enjoyed Achashverosh's feast. And why was it so bad to enjoy the kosher food at Achashverosh's house? Because it wasn't just about the food. You see, since they felt comfortable at Achashverosh's house, since they felt comfortable that the food was kosher, I mean, after all, Mordechai made sure that there's going to be at least kosher food there when he realized that they're not going to listen to him. He said, at least they're going to, they have such desires to go be politically correct. At least let's not make more sins and eat taref also. So he made sure that there's kosher HaShkafa, where there's kosher food. But because they followed their stomach instead of following the Gedol Hador, they ended up becoming more and more comfortable in Achashverosh's house. And the Chachamim explain that they ended up joining the mixed dancing party in Achashverosh's palace, and men and women were dancing together, making all types of sins of Gilui Arayot, which the Torah says a person must die and not sin, make such a sin. This, Rabotai, is one of the places, one of the sources we learn from, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu not only hates immorality, but specifically immorality even if it's not the actual intimate act itself, but rather even just dancing of men and women in public. Men and women dancing in public is forbidden according to the Torah. It's considered Gilui Arayot. And Rabbi Yaron Reuven Shalom, in page 170, in his Sefer about Purim, says a person has to understand it's absolutely forbidden to attend a wedding where there is mixed dancing, even if the bride is your own sister. We may not go only to the chuppah of such parties. Some people say, no, I know there's mixed dancing over there, but I'm not going to be at the mixed dancing. I'm just going to go to the chuppah. Not allowed to even go to the chuppah. If you know there's going to be mixed dancing at that party, not allowed to enter the building. We must protest for God's honor, Rabbi again says. What example does he bring? He says, would a mother let her daughter bring her wedding gown into the kitchen while the chocolate brownies were being prepared? Or would she say, don't come in, your lovely gown will get dirty? Why are we afraid that the soul might get soiled? Why don't we care about the souls of our children, our spouses, and yes, ourselves? People think that they can go to these parties, but because they're married, or they're okay, or they're this, or they're that, they're not going to get damaged by these parties. The Sefer Hasidim says 800 years ago, places that have mixed dancings causes that a huge chilul Hashem, a desecration of Hashem's name. It's a huge sin, and each sin creates a demon. So those places, whether it's a wedding or a bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah or whatever type of party that has mixed dancing, also has millions and millions of shedim, demons filling the place. And those demons go home with all of those people. So even if you go just to the chuppah, even if you sit all the way in the back and you're not involved in all of it, you will get damaged 100% as a result of being part of it. 100%. No, but I didn't dance. Doesn't matter. Just the fact that the wedding gown went into the kitchen, it didn't have any intention of eating any brownies, but it still got dirty because it was next to it. Same concept here. Same concept here. When Am Yisrael simply ignored the strong advice of their Gedolim, the strong advice of Mordechai Yehudi, they allowed themselves to get soiled. Soiled, and their neshamot got soiled to the point where HaKadosh Baruch Hu reconsidered whether they have a right to exist or not. Because they got to a point where they only wanted a rabbi that's going to tell them everything they want to do is allowed. Unfortunately, some people today, when you don't listen to the Gedolei Hador, you simply are in a road for destruction. Because the Torah tells us in Sefer Dvarim, chapter 17, verse 10 and 11, be careful to do according to everything that they teach you. According to the Torah that they teach you, and according to the judgment that they tell you, shall you do. Do not deviate from the word that they tell you, right or left. This is referring to the Gedolei Hador, the leaders of the generation. If they say do it, you do it. You don't ask questions. They say don't do it, you don't do it. You don't ask questions. It just is what it is. Am Yisrael is like a bird, and our Gedolim are the wings. But unfortunately, some people think that this is a rabbinical invention. They think that this is something that the rabbis created in recent history, not realizing that even the midrashim that were written almost 3,000 years ago mention what the Torah world was like 3,000 years ago. As the Midrash in Shmot Rabbah, chapter 3, section 8, says that whoever takes counsel from the elders will not stumble. There's a promise from the Torah. Promise from the Torah that if you listen to the elders, you're not going to stumble. Meaning that even when we had prophets, even when we had Nevi'im, people that speak to Hashem, the elders, meaning the Talmidei Chachamim, the Gedolei Hador, that weren't prophets, were still consulted about every national issue. As the Torah says in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 32, verse 7, ask your father and he will tell you, your elders, and they will say to you. Even when you have a prophet, meaning your father, consult a Sanhedrin, which is your elders. So here we see that when we disregard the sages, we in essence lose our unity, we lose our right to exist. And once we get to such a point, the Satan shows up and tries to actually make that happen. Hashem Yishmo. And that's what happened 3,000 years ago. 3,000 years ago, we disregarded the Chachamim. We disregarded the elders. And the Midrash says in Esther Rabbah, chapter 7, section number 13, 18,500 Jews attended that party, ate, drank, became intoxicated, and sinned. And the Satan immediately denounced them before HaKadosh Baruch Hu and said, Master of the universe, how long will you cleave on to this nation who distanced themselves from you? After all the miracles that you've made for them, and they do not come before you to do tshuva, if you please, destroy them. So Hashem responds to the Satan, what will be my Torah? Satan responds courageously and quickly, make do with the Torah of the angels alone. Meaning, let the angels fulfill your Torah and that's it. You don't need the Am Yisrael to fulfill the Torah. Just destroy the world, you don't need them. So Hashem says to the Satan, bring me a scroll, and I will write a decree of destruction. And that's what the Satan did. He brought a scroll, and God wrote a decree to allow Haman to destroy the people. Meaning that this was not just a scare tactic, Rabotai. This was not just a scare tactic. This was a massive situation that Am Yisrael nearly got annihilated. Why? They followed their desire instead of following Kadosh Baruch Hu's rule. You see, this is what happened to us 3,000 years ago. When young people like Moshe and Leora today and other Talmidim of mine that BeEzrat Hashem are getting married next week, and others that have gotten married in the past and future BeEzrat Hashem, when they have a wedding without mixed dancing parties, without a Chilul Hashem, without all this garbage, they don't realize what they're doing. They think, okay, so we're not making sins, so the Shekhinah can come and forgive all of our sins. It's good, right? You're not understanding. When you have a kosher wedding, when you have a kosher bar mitzvah, when you have a kosher event, but kosher badatz, not just a kosher food, but kosher music, no dancing, that are mixed. If you're going to have dancing, the guys are on one side, the girls are on a completely different side, they can't see each other. When you have such a party, Rabotai Karim, you are part of the Tikkun Olam. You're part of fixing the mistake we made 3,000 years ago of attending a mixed party as a nation. It's a massive Kiddush Hashem. And I know from my own experience that secular people that have attended these holy parties always say the same thing. This is the best wedding I ever went to. I don't know why. There wasn't even any dancing here, or the dancing was separated. But for whatever reason, this is the best wedding I ever went to. This is the best party I ever went to. They don't even know why. You know why? Because the Shekhinah is on top of them for the first time in their life instead of shedim, instead of demons. They're used to going to parties and taking demons home with them. They're in a bad mood, they fight with the wife, they fight with the husband, they get divorced, they cheat, they lie, they hate each other, and they don't even know why. Why? Because the Shadim are trying to cause ruckus in their life. But when the Shekhinah is on you, because that's who attended the party, because there was no sins there, everybody's happy. Suddenly no one complains about the food. No one complains about the music. In fact, they admire everything you did. And they don't even know why. Till this day, people ask me or tell me that our wedding that went to, my kala, my dear wife and our little wedding, our simple wedding, they say it's the best wedding they ever went to. We didn't have any dancing, nothing. The people that attend say it's the best wedding they ever went to. They don't even know why, but until this day they think about it. And these are people that had literally parties that cost them $250,000. They like our little wedding that had a few tables and Rav Ze'ev singing to us and a few guys in the middle having a good time. That's it. Why? Shekhinah was there. Shekhinah was there, Rabotai. Same thing happened tonight. BeEzrat Hashem, same thing will happen next week. Same thing happened with the movie that we have, the Torah love story. Two of our students, the Baruch Hashem, we had the merit to bring together and to do the wedding for them, Michal and Elchanan. Point being is that when people have a kosher wedding, they don't realize what kind of massive Kiddush Hashem they're bringing to the world. So why would somebody not do that? Even after hearing everything I just said? Desires. Desires to get acceptance by society. Desires to fulfill their own physical needs in a different way than appropriate. Desires of admiration. Desires of ego. Desires, Rabotai. Who follows such desires? Only a person that has not learned Torah in the way that the Chazon Ish explained. Chazon Ish says the first type of Torah is a Torah that you pay attention to who's the one that's commanding all of it and acknowledge the sin of ignoring that and the punishment that you will get for doing so. And the other type of Torah study is the study of the details of the halakha in every case. The labor of the Torah has the power to purify the soul, refine and polish it, thus bringing upon a person the pleasant feeling of holiness and purity, and instilling deep in one's heart a feeling of disgust towards undue frivolity and passing pleasures. Here he's saying this is a completely different Torah. In the beginning, you have to learn Torah first and foremost to know who's giving it to you. And if you don't do it, it's a sin. If you make a sin, you're going to get punished severely. But once you're already serving Hashem with that in mind, that you know that He's the one that's giving it, you know that you're not going to ignore Him, you know you're going to listen to Him, Chazon Ish says, now it's time to elevate yourself even further. How? Start toiling in Torah. Start toiling in the mitzvot. How? learn everything you possibly can about the mitzvot. Man or woman, learn. You have a mitzvah, modesty. Learn everything you possibly can about modesty. You have a mitzvah, tarat BEIT, tarat mishpacha. Learn everything you can about tarat mishpacha. You have a mitzvah, kosher. Learn everything you can about kosher. You have a mitzvah, Sukkot, Purim, whatever. Learn everything you can about those mitzvot. Why? Why should you learn so much about what you all becoming rabbis? No. By toiling and laboring over the Torah has the power to purify your neshama, your soul, to refine it, to polish it, to make you suddenly more sensitive, suddenly more open, suddenly more generous, suddenly a better person. Even if you didn't learn of how to be a better person, the Torah itself softens you and refines your character, which in essence was going to bring not only a pure soul and a refined soul, but it's going to give you a pleasant feeling of holiness and purity that will be instilled deep in a person's heart, which will make the person disgusted from all types of foolishness, frivolity, and passing pleasures. When you hear about people going to a sinful party, you hear people paying attention to a sinful holiday, you hear people spending time doing sinful activities, Super Bowl parties, wasting their lives on all types of other endeavors that are against the Torah. It's not that it's just you're not interested. It'll start disgusting you. It'll start becoming disgusting to you. The sin becomes disgusting to you ultimately. How do you know you've gone to that level? When you're disgusted by sins. Not just the sins that you never made, but the sins that you used to make. It's very easy to be disgusted of something that you have no connection to. If you hear somebody's an adulterer, you being disgusted from it, if you were never an adulterer, it's very easy to be disgusted by that. If you hear there's some incest somewhere, or pedophilia, or rape, or some type of drugs, or anything like that, and you've never done any of those crimes, Baruch Hashem, it's very easy to be disgusted by that. Very easy. But if you used to violate Shabbat, if you used to waste seed, if you used to be immoral, if you used to cheat, lie, do all these different things, and now you've gone to the point where you hear that somebody still drives on Shabbat, it gives you like an awful feeling in your heart, like, ugh, I can't believe people still drive on Shabbat. Why? Why would anybody not take a break? Why would anybody desecrate Shabbat? It gives you a certain feeling of disgust, like what's wrong with people? Not that you hate them, not that you look down upon them, you just don't understand. Why would anybody do such a thing? That sense of disgust, Rabotai, is where we all need to shoot for. You're not going to get there tomorrow. What's an example of it? Gemara says that when Rabbi Akiva went to visit one of the foreign kings in order to make sure that the evil decrees that were being passed get removed from Am Yisrael, so sometimes our leaders need to do certain things like that. But they wouldn't go as a nation, they wouldn't go as a group, they wouldn't go and eat their food and have parties with them. They'd simply go, meet, give them the word, give them the bribe, and leave. But this king heard about Rabbi Akiva, and heard that Rabbi Akiva is the Gdol Ador, so he wanted to wine and dine him and show him how powerful he is. How does a king show people that he's powerful? By giving them a lot of stuff. Giving them a lot of stuff. That's in essence the difference between a dog and a king, as Rabbi Chaim writes in his weekly Torah portion a couple of weeks ago, where a dog only wants something for himself in order to get pleasure for himself, and a king wants to show how glorious he is by giving pleasure to other people. So sometimes you see that certain people are more like dogs than kings, but that's a conversation for a different time. The point being is that this king wanted to show Rabbi Akiva a good time. So what did he do? He picked the most beautiful prostitutes that he had, and he said, go and show Rabbi Akiva a good time. As soon as these prostitutes came to the hotel that Rabbi Akiva was staying at, they knocked on the door. Rabbi Akiva saw them, ran to the corner, and started vomiting non-stop. In the beginning, the women didn't know what to do. Maybe he got sick, food poisoning. So they just stayed there. Maybe we'll take care of him after. The whole night, he couldn't stop vomiting. Vomit. non-stop vomiting, just to the point where it got scary. They ran out of there. They went to the king. Listen, Your Highness, we have no idea what we did or what happened, but as soon as we got there, this guy just started telling us to get out. We're disgusting, and disgusting, and he just started throwing up nonstop. So the king, the next day, went to Rabbi Akiva and he says, Rabbi, what, you didn't find my women beautiful? He says, what women? That disgusting stuff that you sent me? Ugh! Disgusting. Why is it disgusting? He says because Akadosh Baruch Hu finds immorality, promiscuity, immodesty disgusting. If he finds it disgusting, I find it disgusting. How did you get to such a level, Rabbi Akiva? Because I saw that when a human being passes by a dead animal, Rav Victor Miller wrote this in one write-up I saw at one time. Human being passed by a dead animal, after it's dead for a little while, starts to smell. You see its body split up, spleen everywhere, or the stomach everywhere. That flesh, little by little, the maggots, the worms come and start giving it the aroma that you'd like to forget. So as soon as a human being sees and smells this dead animal, this nevela sucha, he's disgusted, flinches, runs away, makes expressions, even thinking about it is disgusting. So Rabbi Akiva understood. When I see a dead animal, I'm immediately disgusted. But when a Kadosh Baruch Hu sees a dead animal, he's not disgusted. Why? It's his creation. He's not disgusted of a dead animal. He's the one that caused it to die. But he does say that when he sees immorality, when he sees promiscuity, when he sees immodesty, he puts his back to it. He's disgusted by it. V'lo yareh b'cha davar v'shav me'acherecha, the pasuk says, that I don't see a thing of nakedness among you and give you my back. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm so disgusted. I'm so disgusted of immodesty. When you walk around as an immodest woman, when you don't have arms or legs, meaning you don't wear sleeves and you don't wear leggings, you simply are naked. You're wearing underwear, but you call it clothes, and you walk around the street this way. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you his back. He can't listen to your prayers. Why? He's disgusted from you. You admire a woman that's walking around with no arms and no legs, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is disgusted from you also. So Rabbi Akiva says, that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is disgusted from. But a human being is not disgusted from that. So how can I get myself to be disgusted of it? So Rabbi Akiva will take a dead animal and start smelling it. And then vomit. And then again smell it. And vomit non-stop. Not recommended to do at home. But he trained himself to think every time he threw up of an immoral, immodest woman. So as soon as the immoral, immodest women showed up at his hotel, he was already trained for many decades that this is disgusting, and therefore he started throwing up uncontrollably because he really believed that was disgusting. That's the reality, Rabotai. When Am Yisrael celebrated that which is disgusting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says they have lost their right to exist. Why? They're doing the exact opposite of what I told them to do. Hashem Yishmor. So the Chazon Ish says that in addition to the labor of Torah learning, results in tremendous love and devotion to the observation of the details of the mitzvah, the halachot of which he is laboring over, and his innermost self will tell him that this is what he was created for. One of the greatest benefits that you have in learning deeply why we do what we do as Jewish people, why we act the way we act, why we look the way we look, why we celebrate the way we celebrate, why we run away from sinful things like we do, and so on and so forth. The more you learn about it, the Chazon Ish says, that's going to give you the love for the mitzvah. And you yourself will want to start doing it. You yourself will want to start doing it. We have one Talmid, one of the Talmidim of Rabbi Ephraim, who took on himself to start learning the Shas. Before he started learning the Shas, he was a off the derech yeshiva bachur already from years ago, hasn't kept Shabbat in probably 10 years. But we made an agreement with them to start learning the Shas. Sure, make some money, learn the Shas, why not? So he started learning. So, before you know it, he finished Masechet Brachot. His wife tells us, you know, Rabbi, he started making brachot every time, blessings every time he eats something now. It's Baruch Hashem. Then he started learning Masechet Ta'anit. Oh, you know, Rabbi, he started keeping Yom Kippur. Baruch Hashem. Before you know it, okay, take on Masechet Shabbat. Before you know it, he's keeping Shabbat. He's like, honey, we got to get prepared for Shabbat. Shabbat? Shahu? What? What? Shahu? What? Shabbat, Shabbat's coming, Shabbat's coming. What's to us in Shabbat? Shabbat's another day. No, what do you mean Shabbat? We got to keep it, got to do this, got to do this, got to do this. Okay, but it's only Wednesday. Exactly, we got to get ready. He started learning about the rules, and because he toiled over them, he started falling in love with them. He started becoming more passionate about them. And Baruch Hashem keeps the entire Torah. Why? The more you learn, the more you start loving the mitzvot. The people that are robots are people that don't learn. They simply do because somebody told them to do it. And as I told you earlier today, robots eventually malfunction. Robots eventually break. Don't be a robot. You see, in the previous generation, Rabotai Karim, we had simpler people. The Sephardic Judaism was very different back then than it was now. And the reason why is because my grandparents and some of your grandparents, they had what's called emunat tmima, where even if they weren't Talmidei Chachamim, they knew all of the halachot and everything, they had a lot of respect for their rabbis and they had complete emunah in Hashem. Simple emunah, that even at the test of time they kept it. But unfortunately, that did not last to get to their kids and to their grandkids. That's why it's not recommended to have simple emunah. But if you hear the stories of some of the non-Talmidei Chachamim of the previous generation, you realize, wow, how far we've dropped in such a short period of time. Just a couple of days ago, or yesterday actually, there was a Shabbat Chatan of a family of Rabbi Ephraim, and they went to the Chatan's family, the Shachar family. And the grandfather of the Shachar family, Alav Shalom, his name was Yaron Shachar. He was a Sephardic Jew that was the barber for Rav Tzion Abba Shaul, one of the Gedolei Ador in the previous generation. So the barber, he was very close to Rav Tzion Abba Shaul. Now he didn't know a lot of Torah, but anytime somebody would tell him a mitzvah, right away he would do it. Right away, no wasting time. No wasting time. But he was a simple man, honest living. The rabbi would come to him once a month. That's the halakha, you got to get a haircut every month. Rabbi would come to him and he would give him a haircut and they would talk and that's it. Simple Jew, following the law to the best of his ability, but he wasn't a Talmid Chacham. Does that mean that he was Rasha, Chas v'Shalom, Tzaddik? How do we know he's Tzaddik? From this story. From this story. When you learn of one mitzvah, you learn about the entire person. So one day, he decides that he wants to put roof tiles. Roof tiles. So he gets a guy, come to his building. He says to him, I want you to give me an assessment of how much it's going to cost me to do roof tiles. So the guy comes over there, also another Sephardi Jew. There in Eretz Yisrael, he comes on the roof, he says, oh, it's going to cost you $5,000. So, okay, 1 second, I pay right away. So hold on 1 second, wait on the roof. He goes into the house, takes out money that he's been saved up over a long period of time, got $5,000, comes up and he says, here you go, hey, $5,000. When are you going to start? That's the type of honest people they were. They believed in people. Today, you don't give anybody anything because you know that if you give them the money, they never come back. But in those days, there was actually some emunah in people. Give them the $5,000. He says, I start tomorrow. Okay. As they're talking, some Hasid Breslev got to the bottom of the floor over there, not where they were on the roof, was downstairs and decided to start doing Itbodedut. Start doing Itbodedut 40 years ago already, 50 years ago. He's like, Abba, Abba, help me, Abba. I don't have any money for this. I don't have any money for that. Please, Hashem, help me, Abba, help me. And he starts crying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This simple Breslov just talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, help me, help me. So, Rabbi Yaron, Rabbi Yaron Shachar, he says to the contractor, do me a favor. I'm going to give you the money, but just give me the money I just gave you for a second. I'll give it back to you. Just give it to me. So the contractor gives him the 5,000 back. He puts the rubber band tight on the money, $5,000, tuck, and throws it right where the guy, the Breslover is. Doesn't know who he is. Throws it right where he is, and he tells the contractor, no, hide. She doesn't see where it comes from. She doesn't see where it comes from. She doesn't think that it's us. And all of a sudden they hear the Breslover Hasid says, oh, Abba, thank you, what a blessing. Oh, Abba, thank you so much. Now I can pay the bills, and I can pay this, and I can pay that. Abba, I love you. Now that Hasid, what does he think? He thinks that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave it to him. What's the real answer? HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave it to him. Now you could say, no, what do you mean? It was Rabbi Yaron Shachar over there. Yaron Shachar, he gave it to him. No. HaKadosh Baruch Hu used Yaron Shachar to give it to him. It's just that Yaron Shachar was righteous enough, heard about a mitzvah, I'm doing it right now. He needs money, I'm giving it to him right now. Why? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to want. Now the contractor was so impressed by him. He says, Mr. Shachar, I've never seen anything like that before. I want to be partnered with you. Tomorrow, the job I start, 50% off. 50% on me, 50% on you. 2,500. Yaron Shachar said, no, chas v'shalom. I'm going to go give you the entire 5,000 right now. This is my mitzvah. It's my mitzvah. I want the mitzvah. That's what he wants. He wants the mitzvah. Didn't know a lot of Torah. Wasn't a big Talmid Chacham. But he knew that when there's an opportunity to do a mitzvah, there's a Jew that's crying and needs help, there's an opportunity to learn, there's an opportunity to do, I'm going to go do it right away. That's the previous generation, Rabotai. Those were people that were simpler, but they had full emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In our generation, Rabotai Kareem, we don't have this or that. Many people don't have this or that. That's why the Chazon Ish is more relevant now than ever before. If you want to get to such a point, you have to toil, you have to work, you have to do something about it. You can't just sit there and do nothing about it. You can't just think that you're just going to be the Chacham without toiling, because that's sometimes what people think. Another story that came from the same family, from the father, not the grandfather, from the father himself. The father, Yitzchak Shachar, he was had a grocery store, sell vegetables. So one time, one of the local Avrechim knew that he brings groceries to he was next door neighbor to Rav Tzion Abba Shaul. And he says, maybe you could arrange for me to meet him. I need a real question from the Rav. Shlom Bayit issues, I don't know, I can never catch him, he's busy. So Yitzchak Shachar says to him, you know what, every Friday, 10 o'clock, I deliver the groceries and the vegetables to Rav Tzion Abba Shaul. You come with me, and while I'm unloading the vegetables, you talk to him. That's going to be your time to ask him questions. So the Avrech says, oh, thank you so much. 10 o'clock, I'll meet you there. Okay, Baruch Hashem. So Yitzchak Shachar and this Avrech, they meet up. It's Friday. They get to the house of Rav Tzion Abba Shaul. He knocks on the door. The door opens, and they see Rav Tzion Abba Shaul, the Gdol Ador, the biggest rabbi in the world, was a chavruta of Rav Ovadia, with rolled up pant sleeves, puddles everywhere, and he's doing sponja. He's mopping the floor for Shabbat, in the honor of Shabbat. The Gdol Ador is mopping. He's like, Kvod Harav, how are you? I'm with the groceries. Yeah, I have a Avrech, he wants to talk to you. And he turns around, and the Avrech is not there. He's gone. He's like, oh, Mechila, Kvod Harav, I brought somebody here. I don't know what happened to him. Sorry for bothering, Kvod Harav. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. He's not here. He's like, but let me do the help. Let me mop the floor. Come on, why don't the Rav go learn? Rav Tzion Abba Shaul says to him, no, chas v'shalom, you don't know how to do it like me. You don't know how to mop like me. He goes, but the rabbis are going to mop. He goes, who else is going to mop? For kvod Shabbat. For kvod Shabbat. Puts the groceries down, leaves, goes outside, doesn't know what happened to this avrech. As he walks closer and closer to the store, he sees the avrech. He says, hey, what'd you do to me? You left me there hanging. I brought you all with me, and you left. He says, listen, I came over there with shlom bayit problems, but when I saw that the Gedol Ador is mopping the floor, I realized I don't have shlom bayit problems. I have ego problems. I don't have any more problems. If I see that the biggest rabbi in the world makes time to clean the house for Shabbat and help his wife, I don't have any more problems. My shlom bayit problems are in my head. It's my ego. It's nothing else. It's nothing else. Rabotai Karim, that's a person that was able to learn in a second what he needs to know. But it didn't come easy. He had to have already learned enough Torah to be able to accept the answer. Sometimes people don't learn Torah, but because they meet people, they think that they know just as much. This happens, unfortunately, sometimes. I met one person one time who told me that she knows all of these big rabbis, and big rabbi over here, and rabbi over there, and rabbi this, and rabbi that, and rabbi this, and people name droppers. I've never really been a big fan of name droppers, but that's very common in society today of, I don't know, people I guess that maybe are a little bit self-anxious, self-confident issues or something. But Wall Street was very common. People tell you all the guys that they know, and this one they know, and that one they know. I don't know. People always ask me, do you know him? I say, I don't know anybody. I know me. That was the same thing then, the same thing now. Why? I don't care who they are. They probably don't know who I am. They know who I am. What do I care? Point is, why am I talking to you? But people think that they build themselves a pedestal on top of other people's names. There's nothing more wrong than that and more incorrect than that than in Judaism itself. People think that just because they know a lot of rabbis or a lot of big Talmidei Chachamim and so on, that makes them more righteous or that makes them more acceptable. Nothing further from the truth. And so one time I met this woman, and I said, this woman, she says she knows everybody. Now I don't exactly look at women, Baruch Hashem, or anything like that, but I don't really meet people very often, especially in the recent last year or so with the whole Corona thing. But once in a while, you get to meet people at different lectures and so on, have events. But anyway, this particular person, never met them in person, but one time they sent me to their website, and I saw on their website was a picture of this woman, and it wasn't exactly a rabbanit. Let's just say that. She had no arms, no legs. Let's just say that. So I had to say something. I say something. Why? It's my job to say something. Why? Because if this woman knows all these big rabbis, famous rabbis, and no one has told her that she has to put on something to have arms, and she has to put on something to have legs, or else she's considered like she has no arms and no legs, and Hashem is not listening to our prayers, and she's going to go to Gehinnom, she's going to get burned, she's going to get punished. No one's telling her that, so obviously she doesn't have any good friends. Obviously everybody hates her, or everybody's too selfish to tell her, or they're scared of her. One way or the other, no one is telling her, no one cares enough about her, so I choose to throw my hat into the cage and say, hey, listen, you have no arms and no legs according to the Torah. You're not allowed to do that. She tears me apart to 50,000 pieces. You know who I am. You know who I know. Who are you? You are just a Baal Tshuva. You're just around for a few years. I already know Rabbi this and Rabbi that and Rabbi tu and Rabbi ta and puputi and puputa. Sounds like the biggest idiot planet Earth has ever absorbed, but unfortunately she wasn't. There's other bigger idiots. What's the response to such people? Simple. There is an halacha. Your misbehavior, your lack of tact, your rejection of the truth, your arrogance, your connections, your whatever you think is valuable is never going to change a single halacha in the world. Reality is, you are violating the Torah. I am giving you information that apparently no one else cares about you enough to tell you. I'm telling you you're violating the Torah by walking around immodest. Needless to say, by posting your immodest picture, even if it's from 20 years ago, on the internet. That's a violation of the Torah so horrible that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can give you cancer 10 times for that. HaKadosh Baruch Hu can give you cancer permanently in Gehinnom for that. Why? Because you are sinning, and on top of it, you're causing other people to sin. You are the reason why Kadosh Baruch Hu almost destroyed all of Am Yisrael on Purim. Why? That's what happened at the Achashverosh's castle. A bunch of immodest women, which led people to sin, which led to a near destruction of the entire nation. No, but the rabbis would have told me, who are you, what to do, and at that moment I realized it doesn't matter what I say. The ego will never let it seep through her head. Never. It'll never seep through her head. Why? I told her the truth. I explained it. She still rejected without any foundational real reason, but simply based on her connections, her money, her reputation, how long she's been around, how long this and how long that. So the only thing I had left to say is this. As good as your connections are, Esav had better connections than you. His father was Yitzchak Avinu the Gedol Ador. His grandfather was even bigger than him, was Avraham Avinu. His brother, Yaakov, is the Gedol Ador. You can't even imagine how great he was. That's where Am Yisrael comes from. And guess what? There's a verse in the Torah that says, Et Esav saneti. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Esav, I hate him. Even though he has connections to Yaakov, to Yitzchak, to Avraham, and even to HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Esav, I hate him. Why? He knew, and he still did. He knew it's not allowed, and he still do it anyway. You may have not known it's not allowed until now, for 50, 60 years. But now you know it's not allowed, and you're still not going to do it. For sure, you're going to get punished severely. Goodbye. That's it. She can hate me until she's blue in the face. I did my job. I did my job. And guess what? It works. It works really well. They hate you. They don't like you ever. But nonetheless, they don't enjoy the sin. And sometimes you'd be surprised. You see them 2-3 years later, they walk around like Rebbitzins. They're never going to give you the credit. They're never going to say, thank you for saving me. In fact, they're going to hate you even more when they see you. But who cares? You saved another Jew. You saved another Jew from destroying himself or herself. That's Rabotai. That's the most important thing. When a person cannot help themselves, even after you give them the truth, you have to pray for them. You have to do everything you possibly can to help them. But needless to say, you can't do any of this until you start saving yourself. Purim is a time where each and every single one of us has to build on whatever merits we have from our ancestors, whatever learning we have in our life, and whatever things we can gather in order to ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu to give us some more time that we can learn more, do more, and serve Him better, in order to avoid any chas v'shalom, any type of disaster, any destruction that the wicked people in the world are bringing. And that's the reality, Rabotai. You see, the wicked people in the world are not leaving anytime soon. And we have to prepare ourselves for the situation to get worse. And the only way that we can protect ourselves is if we fix ourselves. Because society as we know it is destroying itself. Whether it's the secular world, the non-Jewish world, or the Jewish world, society is destroying itself. And if you don't think that matters to you, it does. One of the Talmidim of the Baal Shem Tov, and I heard this from a shiur, from one of the Geonim of the generation of Rabbi Yitzchak Cohen. He says that one of the Talmidim of the Baal Shem Tov, the Ohev Yisrael, in Sefer Ohev Yisrael, in Parashat Mishpatim, he says the following: Dalecha, know this, Apikosim v'amusrim shebekol dor v'dor, the heretics and the ones that go and bring the Jews to the goyim, people that use the civil court instead of a bedin, people that call the IRS on their fellow Jews, and so on and so forth. Or the heretics, the ones that say that there's no judgment, there's no punishment, all Jews go to heaven. Any type of apikosim, any type of erev rav, That's who he's referring to. דע לך כי האפיקורסים והמוסרים שבכל דור ודור, מהם נמשך כל המגפות והחולאים והפגעים רעים שבעולם וגם בכללות ישראל, רחמנא ליצלן. He says, know this, that these heretics and these Muslim that are in every generation, it's due to them that all of the plagues, all of the sicknesses, and all of the disasters and evil that's in the world comes to the world only because of them. And in that world, it includes Am Yisrael. Sefer Ohev Yisrael, Parashat Mishpatim. This is a Rebbe that called himself Ohev Yisrael. Ohev Yisrael meaning he loved all Jews. But needless to say, he loved Hashem. And he called things as they are. I love Jews, but only the ones that love themselves and love each other. If you don't keep Shabbat, if you don't keep the Chagim, if you don't keep Torah, you don't keep mitzvot, what's making you a Jew? You see, Rabotai Karim, a lot of people are very scared of this whole corona situation. Take the vaccine, don't take the vaccine. They haven't gotten the point. The story of Purim is supposed to teach us that the decree, the evil decree, it didn't get as bad in the beginning as it was in the end. In the beginning there was problems, but those problems lasted 10 years. Only at the end, where Haman got the final judge to say, kill all the Jews, the good and the bad ones, did Am Yisrael finally wake up. Let us not get to such a point again. Right now you have Corona, but in reality Corona is a walk in the park next to what happened to us 3,000 years ago. Right now you have a few things politically that literally like a walk in the park next to what happened to us 3,000 years ago. Let us see the current signs that we have, the Corona, the economic issues, the political issues, all these issues that we have in the world. Let us see those for what they really are, as simply warning signs from HaKadosh Baruch Hu for things that may get worse if we don't do tshuva. If we take the lesson of Purim and apply it to our life right now, realize that Corona is only going to be cured by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Political situation will only be cured by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The enemy situation will only be cleared by HaKadosh Baruch Hu and nothing else. And the only way HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to do all of this is if we continue to publicize more and more Torah to help Am Yisrael do tshuva. If we realize these things, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will solve all of the problems in the world. But if we don't, if we continue to blame the president of the US or Israel, the president of Iran, the coronavirus, the political situation, the anti-Semites, if we continue to blame everything else, then in essence, we're making the same mistake we made for 9 years, 3,000 years ago. And we're putting Hashem in a situation where we're forcing his hand to fulfill the promise that's made in the Gemara Masechet Sanhedrin, where Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi says, Am Yisrael will do tshuva before Mashiach comes, either because they want to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or because they don't. If they do, Mashiach will come, will solve all the problems in the world, Mashiach will rule the world, Am Yisrael, the chosen people, all the enemies will be destroyed. But if they don't want to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will bring a leader like Haman to force everybody to choose a side and do tshuva. Rabotai Karim, Haman is already here. Haman is already here, just like he was at the Purim story. He's already here. Let Hashem not have to use him to get us to do tshuva. Let's help Am Yisrael do tshuva. Let's publicize more Torah. Let's help more poor people. Let's do more. Let's push more. Stop focusing on buying more houses and more watches and more show-off. Stop allowing your ego to stop you from doing tshuva. Stop allowing your ego to destroy your marriage and your upbringing of your kids. Submit to the Torah. I promise you there's nothing in the world better than that. Purim is an auspicious time to get salvation from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I hear and see extraordinary miracles for myself and other people, every single Purim, amazing things happen. For those people that serve Hashem and make sacrifices for the sake of Hashem, now is the time to get your salvation. And if you haven't made those sacrifices yet, start now. Start today. And BeEzrat Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will bring that salvation to you, and that will become a domino effect that will help somebody that's next to you and somebody that's next to them. And maybe, you never know, maybe by Purim, just in a few days from now, enough people would have done tshuva that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings the salvation that we're all yearning for. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'amen.
Seven years of lectures. Seven months of film editing. Countless hours of study by two rabbis. Information we received over 3,000 years ago. All for this moment. Tikkun had greed. The movie.
There's a small member in your body. It shouldn't take over your whole life. If you satiate it, you're never going to have enough.
The Soper clan, when it gets a hold of something, it does not let go.
Time for us to rectify what we have done.
Normal numbers should be somewhere around 20 million or higher.
You're never going to have control of it. If you start and only feed it when it's permissible according to the Torah.
Pornography is as addictive as crack cocaine.
You're always going to be happy, including this world and the next. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen.